Bonjour, comment ça va? Welcome to Learn French with Vitalis. Now, this is a continuation from the previous lesson, and in this part of the lesson, we are going to talk of what is combien, how many or how much. Combien means how many or how much. This one here, combien. So you can say, how many children do you have? How much money do you have? So that how much, how many is what is combien. And it's normally followed with the article de, which means of, to refer to how many of what, how many of what. Now, these sentences are put in different colors so that you are able to tell something. We are going to also mention something about inversion of questions. But for now, let's talk about vous avez combien de voitures? As I've said, combien de is how many of. And so with that in mind, and having followed or gone through the previous lessons, I'm very sure you can be able to understand this question. Vous avez combien de voitures? You have how many cars? Vous avez combien de voitures? Vous avez, you remember from the conjugation of the verb avoir, vous avez combien de, how many of, voitures we talked about in the previous lesson. Actually, it's up here. 3 voitures. So, vous avez combien de voitures? The next one, il a, you remember the conjugation of avoir with il. Il a combien de femmes? Femme I've already talked about. So you should be able to tell what is the meaning of this question in English. Il a combien de femmes? Il a combien de femmes? He has how many wives? How many wives does he have? So, nous avons combien de maisons? Nous avons combien de maisons? Elle a combien de pantalons? She has how many trousers? So, I'll read them quite fast and please repeat after me. Vous avez combien de voitures? Vous avez combien de voitures? Il a combien de femmes? Il a combien de femmes? Nous avons combien de maisons? Nous avons combien de maisons? Elle a combien de pantalons? Elle a combien de pantalons? Now, you should be able to answer those questions. Now, there is something called inversion, which I'm going to explain to you briefly. Because even in English, it's not very common that somebody will say, he has how many wives? Okay, that it's possible to say that, but you can't keep on using that form of question like, okay, you have how many books? He is going to the market when? You know, it's a possibility, but then sometimes you want to say, how many books does he have? How many vehicles do you have? So you'll begin with how many. And that's what we are doing in this second part here. Combien de. We said how many of vehicles. How many vehicles do you have? Now, when we begin with combien de voitures, so do you have, here there is what we call inversion. We said vous avez means you have. But in this case, we want to say have you. How many vehicles have you? That is an inversion. How many vehicles have you? And when you do that inversion, you put a hyphen in between the have you. So how many vehicles have you? Il a combien de femmes? Combien de femmes a-t-il? So this one is going to be interesting because there is something that I've pronounced there which you may be wondering. So combien de femmes? Then we have this. Combien de femmes a-t-il? This is because the inversion of il a, which should be a-il, I think the French people realized that it sounded empty, like there was a hole in between a-il. This one is easier, avez-vous? But this one, a-il, I think they felt it wasn't sounding so well, so they added a T in between. That's why there is a-t-il. It doesn't really mean anything other than just that it is put there for that purpose of pronunciation. Combien de femmes a-t-il? Combien de femmes a-t-il? And if it was elle also, it would still be the same. A-t-elle? Like in this last question. Combien de pantalons a-t-elle? Combien de pantalons a-t-elle? And this, nous avons combien de maisons? Combien de maisons avons-nous? That would be the same as this other upper one. I think that should be very clear, and you should be able to ask questions using the phrase combien de. How many of? How much of? Please, using all that you have learned so far up to now, are you able to ask a question and answer? Please just ask a question using the phrase combien de, and then give the answer using the numbers we have learned from number 1 to 20. Please, if you can do that in the comment section, it would be so great. So great. Thank you so much for today.